Hey there, my name is Cole Adams, and you are watching the best college basketball podcast out there that covers the entire sport of college basketball, brackets, bubbles, and bid stealers. Now, here are your hosts, Sam Fetterman and Jonathan Lidskin.
Season 7, episode 25 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers. I am Sam Fetterman. That is Jonathan Lidskin. We're back for episode 2 of this 10 tip-off talk marathon week. And we've got Paul Fritschner, the man, the myth, the legend, making his Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers debut. Paul on the call. No, it's Paul on the pod.
Let's go, fellas. Appreciate you having me on. Let's have some fun.
And of course, we have to preview the XAVIER Musketeers. It hasn't been worth previewing them. At least it wasn't last year. This year, it definitely is, though. They spent $14 million, according to Richard Pitino, in court, which is something that we'll definitely discuss as a number to know. And I think that for that money, like, their roster makes a good amount of sense. There's certainly some holes to it, but it's so much of a clear upgrade. I'm not sure how many teams just have a general talent level upgrade more significant than XAVIER's this offseason.
Yeah, I think last year what happened was, Richard Pitino comes in, you had the dynamic of, hiring a new coach or bringing in a new staff, all of that, and you're trying to get your NIL bearings together as well. And so you're trying to figure out what's the number we need to be at. And I think XAVIER thought that the number they were at last year, which the reports were, a little bit over $5.5 million, that you thought that number would be competitive within the Big East. And then all of a sudden you got closer to the season, some more numbers started coming out, and it turns out, well, you know what? They weren't even close to being competitive last year. And to XAVIER's credit, to the administration, to everybody around the program, to their credit, they came together, fellas, and they said, hey, look, if we're going to play real basketball in the Big East, if we're going to try and compete at a high level, we need to step our game up financially in a big way. And they did that this season. Richard Pitino, I was there in the courtroom that day listening to the testimony all afternoon, and I heard him, to give that number a little over $14 million. And, that was before Filip Borovichinen was cleared to play. So it's 14 million plus whatever they paid Filip, who, assuming he is on the roster this upcoming season and he's cleared to play, it would be that on top of that. So, I think what you see now is a XAVIER roster that has invested a lot, and they're hoping that it turns out this season.
Jonathan?
Yeah, agree with everything that Paul said. There's a pretty clear investment here from a financial perspective, which they did not have last year. And it's resulted in a clear talent upgrade. We'll get into some of these guys individually, but there are some guys who I think really can play this year for them. And I think that XAVIER is going to be quite competitive as a result of stepping their game up in the financial department.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. Like, this is what you need. This is what they got. It's not an elite level. It's enough. And that's kind of the other thing. It's like, for $14 million, which is what we know they spent, this feels like pretty good. Like, I don't know how much better they could have done with $14 million.
I agree. I think so. I think the clear emphasis right out of the gate in the portal was they wanted to get a big man. That was something they didn't have last year. They didn't really have that true five. Jovan Milicevic had to slide over and play that position. Anthony Robinson and Pop Njai didn't work out. So you had to get a true five, and they got that in Mike Nwoko from LSU. And then from there it was, all right, now who's the point guard? And they went and got Chance Westry, who sure has had his injury concerns before, but he's taking care of the basketball well. And he was, second team All-AAC at UAB this past season. So, a really, really good talent in Chance Westry, and somebody that can, finish around the rim and is another fun guy to watch. You complement that with Ruben Dominguez from Texas A&M, who started pretty much the entire season. Some games he didn't start, but the vast majority of the season he started for an SEC team. And, you bring back Jovan, you bring back Filip, you add in a couple of more pieces, Gabe Pizzotto, who was out with a torn meniscus. The pieces make sense.
Yeah, and I want to start with Nwoko because, as you mentioned, this is a roster built around him. He's not this team's best player, but he's the most important one because he's going to be one of the better bigs in the Big East. And there's kind of like a barrier of entry of like, for certain teams, like your big has to be like something. And if he's not, you have to be really, really good in other places. Mike Nwoko passes that something barrier. Is he really, really good? No, but I mean, you're looking for bigs that are at least solid defensively, that can also be efficient offensively. You don't want a guy that is going to be a total sieve defensively, and if you can find one that is decent on defense, that's efficient on offense, that's pretty much what Mike Nwoko is. $3 million was like the report for him, and it's like when that came out early in the offseason, we were like, "Whoa, that feels like a lot." It really isn't, knowing the market now. That's a pretty solid deal for a proven high major solid big man that will give you, doesn't need the ball a ton. The usage was pretty high last year, but I think he needs to have the ball in his hands all that much. And when he does, he usually does good things with it, even if it's not that complicated. Dunk ball, get to the line, decent free throw shooter, blocks some shots. Not super complicated, but can rebound and can score a little bit and can play defense.
Yeah, the defensive side of the ball is where I have the most concern with this team in general, but I think that's why it's fun watching a Richard Pitino team, is because he wants to get up and down the court. They want to run fast. It's a very similar offensive style to what Xavier fans watched under Sean Miller. A lot of the same terminology, a lot of the same, pace, that kind of thing. You play conceptual basketball instead of just running out of sets. It's a very different style from a team like UConn, who doesn't want to score until there's 1 second left on the shot clock, right? They're going to grind you down and going to make you guard 5 screens before you even get to the screen that get to the next screen that matters, right? Like, that's not Xavier. They're going to get up and down the floor. They're going to try and score early in the shot clock. They want to wear you out with their pace more so than, the sets that they run in the half court. And it's fun. And that's where, maybe you can overcome some of those defensive inefficiencies, because you're not so worried about what's going to happen on the defensive end, because you're worried about, all right, if we give up a 2, we're just going to come down and hit a 3. And, I say that in the same breath, fellas. I don't think this is the most talented 3-point shooting team in the Big East by any stretch, but I do think you have a collection of guys. You have an absolutely lethal sharpshooter in Ruben Dominguez. You have Jovan Milicevic, who was fantastic from 3 last year. I'm really interested to see what we get out of Jovan Milicevic this year, what we see from him, because now that he slides over into the 4, is it more of his true position, bringing guys out to the perimeter. What does his role look like? What do his percentages look like this year? That's something I'm keeping an eye on.
Yeah, he's burly, he's big, but he's not a 5 in the sense that he feels like a very, if basketball was still played the way it was in 2008, would be the perfect power forward. As in, he can stretch it and he can shoot it, but he's got that physicality in his game, where at least on the offensive side of the ball, I think on defense he's pretty bad. But I think on the offensive side of the ball, he can face up, he can post up, and he can shoot it. But I think there's also just plenty of lineups on this team that he's not part of. The backup big situation, I think, is you could do a lot worse than Cheetah Kudus and a League Bay. I don't think you're getting much. What'd you say?
For sure. You could do worse.
I don't think you're getting a ton of offensive pop there, but I think you're getting a lot of glue guy stuff. And I think that's kind of what they're going to need out of that spot. I don't think that they're going to be, especially if the guards hit, I don't think they're going to be asking Milicevic to be this whatever points per game was 12 points a game that he was last year. Don't think they're going to need that from him if the guards hit.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the guards and the perimeter, and I think Pizzotto is a key to a lot of that, because Pizzotto, coming over from Evansville, you don't play with a torn meniscus. He's hurt again through the summer. He's just working his way back to being full strength and really getting up and down the floor. And to that end, if Pizzotto can shoot it a little bit, but he can also play make and he can get to the rim. And so a lot of that feeds off each other, to where you're not putting as much pressure on a guy like Jovan, where last year, Jovan and Phillip, a couple of guys that had already played for Richard Pitino, they shouldered a lot of the load on that team because there wasn't a whole lot else. There just wasn't. So a lot of the offensive load fell to Jovan and Phillip. Trey Carroll obviously played a great role on last year's team, but he was a one and done guy at Xavier, right? So now this year you're trying to see if you're Jovan, if you're Phillip, specifically Jovan, since we were talking about him, what does that look like? Do you have to play at such a high usage rate? Probably not, right? You have more around you, more talent to fill out this roster than you had last year.
Yeah, I mean, like if you told me last year, like just looking at the usage rates for last year's Xavier team, like if you told me All Right would have a 15% usage for that team, I would be concerned, and I was concerned. It was a problem that he wasn't that he didn't give them.
I'd be concerned if it was higher too.
Yeah, and like Malik Moore, 18. Like those were kind of the two guys coming in aside from Pizzato that I looked at as the scoring guards. And Pizzato obviously getting hurt changed a lot of that. Borovikinen was good last year. I don't know, like I'm kind of operating under the assumption that like I have no idea what's going to happen with these fifth-year guys. I know that in Ohio, like the court ruling has already come. Like I'm waiting until I get like a formal from everything around, like, yes, this is happening or no, this isn't happening before I fully say like this is happening or this isn't happening. Because I got no idea. If he's back, that adds more depth to the backcourt. I don't think, but like, again, the key to this team this year, they have good size in a lot of different positions. And they had that, they definitely had great size last year too. And I think that's a key for what Pitino's trying to build. But I also like the size they have in the backcourt. Chance Westry, the injury will always be a question for me with Westry. I mean, 2 years at Syracuse and he played 7 minutes.
You once called him an urban legend.
I did call him an urban legend. That's what he was at Syracuse.
Yeah.
And he was awesome last year. The playmaking leap that he took at that size, it's great. Think he's physical enough for the free throw rate to come along, but like, is the physicality going to play quite as well in the Big East? And does it play to the point where it gets him injured? Who knows? Because the injuries have been a thing with him. Then True Washington, like I think True Washington is unbelievable. I wrote down he's the Sidney Moncrief of Bishop Boswell's.
Oh my God. Oh, what a ball.
I like that.
He might be my favorite player on the team to watch right now and to see, and the way he operates, I think is it's just at a really high level, man. It's very it's very fluid. He knows where he's supposed to be. He's in the right spots. He's the best defensive player on the team. He's a skilled offensive player. He can shoot when he needs to. It's very obvious he's played for Richard before. It's obvious he's played at a high major level before. True's the real deal.
I mean, he's the best two-way player on this team and one of the best two-way players in the Big East. Like,
for sure.
To me, the easiest bet for an all Big East team.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. No doubt. Because, you look at a guy like Jovan who, if he builds off of last year and could skyrocket, then yeah, that's right there for the taking. But I think the way that the roles could play out and the impact that you have on both sides of the basketball and in big moments, whatever it might be, True doesn't seem like a guy that's going to get phased by any of that. Not to say that other guys will, but True more than most is a steady-handed guy who you can trust on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, I mean, he's won a lot of college basketball games at different spots. There's like that's not a lot. You can't say that about a lot of guys on this roster. Like Chance Westry has had, like, that UAB team was a collection for sure. Like Evansville, not a very winning program. Milicevic wasn't winning at Xavier last year. Nwoko hasn't won a ton. I mean, obviously Dominguez was winning last year, and Chidakudis, Robert Morris wasn't bad. But like overall, this is not a team that's full of guys that have come straight from program. Like UAB is a good program, but it's not a pro. They weren't awesome last year. They lost to Alabama State. I was watching that game. I was making food while watching that game. And then I think Jonathan, you texted me after that game. You were like, UAB lost to Alabama State.
Yeah.
I was like,
It was
that was
definitely one of those
first
scores that definitely one of those scores that you like notice like very
70 to
randomly.
67. That was the first UAB game after the Chance Westry feature that I wrote for Basket Under Review, which I'm going to plug right now, basketunderreview.com. Chance Westry, I wrote an interesting story. I thought it was good back in November. Anyway, and then Pizzato. I like, there's a version of this team where he's the best player that's really good, and there's a version of this team where he's the best player that's really bad.
It's funny trying to project what Gabe Pizzato is going to be this year, where you've heard so much about him. And I remember hearing last year, about him before he got hurt, and how good he was and how much he stood out. Now, last year's team was not nearly as talented as this year's team, so you got to take that with a grain of salt as well. But I remember hearing how good he was playing in practice last year, and then now this year he's out for the vast majority of the summer with another injury, and he works his way back in, especially by the last week of the summer session. Again, there's a lot to be excited about on both sides of the ball for him, but I want to see him be aggressive. I want to see him get to the rim. I want to see him use some of that explosive athleticism that we've heard so much about.
Jonathan, you're the Valley guy.
Yeah, I thought Pizzato was a better bet to translate up than Allright was last year. And the injuries have been a problem. Like, he would have been the freshman of the year in the Missouri Valley if not for injuries. Overall, Allright. Like, Sam, you and I said it last year, like the concern that Xavier was essentially building their team around the best player from two teams below 200 in KenPom. Like, that's not the case here. Like, they have a clear identity, and I think even if Pizzato is just like a, go score for us off the bench type of player, I think that's okay. Like, he certainly does not need to be the star here at a Big East school. But I think, like, you have two guards that want to play downhill and are fast and aggressive. You have a legit rim protecting big in Nwoko, which, sure, he wasn't, maybe the best option of the centers in the portal, but Xavier went out and got him early to really establish that position. And then, you space the floor with Dominguez. So yeah, the shooting might not be the best shooting team in the world, but I think they're going to put so much pressure on the rim. And I think Pizzato could end up being a part of that.
Yeah. I mean, Pizzato, the rim numbers were really, really good at Evansville. The shooting obviously was very good. Just if you look at the synergy page, like, it pops for Pizzato at Evansville. And then you mentioned Dominguez. I mean, I think I texted you in like November, like, Ruben Dominguez is my favorite player in college basketball or something. He's a joy to watch because he's just gonna take 10 threes a game. Like, that's just what he's gonna do. He's gonna do absolutely nothing else, but he's just gonna take 10 threes a game.
And a lot of them are gonna go in.
Yeah, like at least 40% of them.
Yeah. And I think I really having somebody like that was a serious piece to me when, like I said earlier, you didn't have a ton of shooter. Like, Chance Westry's not a very good shooter, right? That's not his strong suit. Gabe Pizzato can shoot it, but again, he's coming off an injury, and you got to make sure you have guys that you can count on that are healthy going into this year. True Washington can certainly shoot the ball. Kayla Kaus, incoming freshman, backup point guard, can certainly shoot the ball. But, you're not counting on a freshman. You're not counting on a guy coming off injury. They'll probably play significant minutes, but you need somebody that you can be sure of, and that's Ruben Dominguez.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I think that, like, I know that, Ruben Dominguez was not the last piece that they added here, but it really does feel like, hey, like, we're going to be this aggressive team. Let's go and find one guy who can really help space the floor to give Westry and Washington more room. And, you happen to find one of the better shooters in college basketball, in Ruben Dominguez, to fill that role. So I think that, like, I think this is probably a middle of the pack Big East team still. They're, like, certainly not the favorite in the league, but, like, like the talent upgrade is sensational based on what they had last year. I wouldn't be at all surprised if they sliced that Ken Palm rating in half.
Yeah, for sure. This definitely to me feels like a team that, I think there's a collection of teams in the middle of the Big East where I think you have St. John, and this doesn't need to turn into a Big East preview, but I just think in the context of Xavier and what we're talking about, like you have St. John's, UConn, and Villanova there in the top three to me. And then you have, Xavier, Providence, Creighton, Marquette. Who am I missing?
Marquette up a tier.
Who am I? You think you're that in on Marquette?
I think they're a top 25 team.
Interesting. I do not think they are, but I could be talked into it.
We have to do a Marquette preview. We just do.
Okay.
One guy, by the way, that we haven't mentioned during this is Kalick House, who I think again,
Braden Applehands as well.
Not like I do not think that Kalick is better than his brother, who's going to Maryland. But again, like really aggressive guard, like pressures the ball, will get that downhill, like really fits the identity of this team.
I think he is awesome. From the bit that I have seen of Kalick House, he is a ton of fun to watch. Absolute killer with the ball, can shoot it. I see the vision there with him. There's a lot to be excited about. And I've been really, really impressed with his decision making and just the way that he conducts himself. Kalick's a real deal.
Yeah, and I think that they definitely have a couple of bites at the apple off the bench in terms of guards. And like they have a lot of different guys that can handle the ball a little bit. So they don't necessarily need Chance Westry to be 28% usage. Like True Washington can handle it. Pizzato can handle it. Kalick House. So I think that they will have, and if they get Borovikin, and that changes the calculus of that as well. So I think that they'll have the ability to rotate the ball throughout different guys, run offense through different guys. And even if they don't have a true star, which again, like not sure they have like an offensive star, like maybe Pizzato has the most potential to be that. Maybe Westry does. I think True Washington's most likely to be this team's best player though, because of what we know he brings on the defensive end and then on the offensive end as well. But just having this many bites at the apple of guys that can handle the ball is big. And I like Braden Applehands as well.
Yeah, Braden, I think, is just supplemental shooting. Again, somebody that's played for Richard before. Had a nice season at Drake, but I think he's supplemental shooting there. He'll see minutes for sure, but just a little bit of insurance there.
Yeah, Jonathan, any thoughts on Rollins Aligbe before we get out of here?
Serviceable backup center is the phrase I would use. I wouldn't expect him to be a huge impact player, but he rebounds the ball pretty well for a guy at 6'9", had one of the higher defensive rebounding rates in the Missouri Valley last year. So like him behind Nwoko, I don't think that like Nwoko is a guy you should be playing 35, 32 minutes a game, whatever you want to call it. So I think like, Rollins will come in there, may have a tougher time rebounding at the same rate in the Big East, where the centers are a little taller, maybe a little more physical. But yeah, like serviceable for sure. Can play 15 minutes a game if you need him to.
But the one thing I will say to that too is this isn't the old, I don't want to say the old Big East, like as in pre-2013. I'm talking like the last couple of years of these dominant bigs.
Yeah.
Like, there are some talented bigs in the conference, but it's not like you have an overwhelming collection of every team's got this monster center that you have to go against. If there's going to be a year where, your backup big situation is a bit of a question mark, this is the year that it kind of bails you out to have that season.
Can I just say, like, this backup big, it's not bad. Like, if you look at the rest of the country, like, you could do a lot worse than Rollins Aligbe as your backup.
Oh, for sure. I 100% agree with that. 100%. And even if you look at Mike Nwoko as the starting center, right? If you want to question his defensive ability, like that's fine. He's got plenty of stats from his college days already to back that up. But like I said, the center position, the real deep interior in the Big East, it's not as strong as it has been in the last few years. So if you're Xavier looking at this, I think that's an opportunity for him.
Yeah, it's just, and it's something that I've been looking at all year. And Jonathan, we've talked a lot about this. It's the idea that I'm not punishing you a ton in your rankings for like not having the center, for like not having a good center. It's just like have somebody out there that can be decent. And I think that Xavier is like at least a tier or two above that, like proven high major, decent big man, decent defender, decent offensive player. Obviously LSU was terrible last year, so take from that what you will. But like having decent is like 2 tiers above bad. And that's very important. And there's just so many teams in the bad tier that I'm not even punishing you for being bad. I'm punishing you if you like BYU and you just don't have a big man.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Jonathan, you want to take us home?
Yeah, if you came to hear about Tyler Self and where he's working, you came to the right place. If you came to hear about Missouri Valley obsessed Richard Pitino, you came to the right place. If you came to hear about the latest happenings with Caleb Grill, you came to the right place. This has been Season 7, Episode 25 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers, and we'll see you next time.